sometimes that, lower, the smaller commission piece might be a stepping stone. So don't always pass on it, especially if it opens up the door to deal with someone that is, a long-term relationship and maybe has bigger assets.
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
David Schwalb is a real estate deal maker specializing in below-the-radar deals with a big focus on companies that make or move things. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Absolutely. David, there are 3 questions I ask every guest who comes on the show. In 90 seconds or less, can you tell me, where did you start, where are you now, and how did you get there?
I was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, and went to college at Boston University, majored in international relations, minored in business. After that, I went to University of Illinois Law School, graduated from there about 26 years ago. I started out in private law practice. I was involved in transactional work, both corporate law and real estate law and some franchising law. About 20 years ago, I really felt I was more of an entrepreneur than just someone sitting at a desk, doing law. While I enjoyed the practice of law, I didn't like the business of law. And I was seeing clients who were involved in real estate, making money. And I thought that might be more interesting than worrying about billable hours the rest of my life. So I got into, actually started to invest in multifamily properties in the South Shore neighborhood of Chicago. And, worked fine in the beginning. And then after a while, I realized it was a saturated market and I needed to phase out of that. And during that time, I also obtained a real estate brokerage license, which, being a licensed attorney, is a lot easier to, get a license and hang out a shingle on your own. I had people coming to me looking for deals, particularly apartments. Said, "Hey, we're having a hard time to find apartments to acquire. Can you find us something?" And I early on, I was kind of feeling my way around, and I poked around on the MLS and LoopNet, some other online things, and I realized, my clients had access to a lot of those things, and it'd be hard to add value for them to find them things that the whole world knew about. And one client in particular said, "David, find me deals that just no one knows about. Find them." He suggested to me, how about you drive up and down the, some quiet streets, in Chicago, like in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. Maybe there's a building that looks like there's an out-of-town owner, and, go reach out to them, look them up, and, call them, send them a letter. So I actually, tried that for a few weeks, and with limited success. Right. And I liked the idea of finding deals that were below the radar, but I felt that, that still involved an element of cold calling. And what I also learned is that, in traditional real estate brokerage, it's very focused on sellers where, people are cold calling owners all day long, saying, "Hey, we can sell your apartment complex." And being myself a principal in multifamily, I get those calls and postcards and emails and so forth. And so I realized that's just not the best use of my brain. I mean, that's just, anyone can, do cold calling, and not the most efficient use of time, at least in my opinion. It must work for someone, but some small percentage of the population, I think. So I realized when I was in private law practice, I met a lot of really neat people along the way. In the law firms I was at, clients, bankers, CPAs, professional advisors. And I realized that's my network. That's where I probably could find warm introductions to deals, to potential opportunities. I then just focused on that. And it was a refreshing, message to people that, hey, there's someone out there looking to do deals below the radar. I got introductions to some really great buyers who are tired of, being, one of 100 recipients of, a deal. And there were owners who I met who didn't necessarily want to list. I mean, despite the conventional wisdom out there, there are a number of situations where an owner does not want to publicize that their property is for sale, and they don't want to do an exclusive listing because they, again, don't want it even to be circulating amongst multiple people. So like a great example, up in Milwaukee, there was an office park called Brookfield Lakes Corporate Center. And I was introduced to the owner through a banker, private banker, I had a nice relationship with. And the owner wanted to sell to someone from outside the Milwaukee market. And the rationale was that if they were to hire one of the usual big brokerages, and even if they handled it confidentially, very likely the brokerages there would approach local competitors and they could sign confidentiality agreements all day long, but anyone can feign interest and obtain operating data. And they did not want their local competitors to gain operating data about their office complex. They also had some tenants that were in renewals, some major tenants. And they didn't want those tenants to get wind that their landlord is thinking about selling. So we, on our end, took this investment banking approach where we identified through our, relationships, a few different prospects to approach. And within about 3 or 4, parties that we approached, we had one that said, "Hey, let's go out there, let's look at it." And they made an offer. And, and to this day, I never mass email, below the radar deals. No fax blast, nothing. It's very low key. There's, some psychology to it because we do try to bring together parties, buyers and sellers that are compatible. Just because someone's sitting on a pile of money doesn't mean that they're the right buyer for it. Whether it comes to penciling the deal or personality issues, different people mesh in different ways. Although I must say that, I'm lucky enough that I can, choose who to really focus on. And if there are clients that, they're not behaving appropriately, then I don't have to work with them. That's, and by the way, we do handle some exclusive listings once in a while, but those come to us because we have an existing relationship with someone. They say, "Hey, David, we want this to be shown to the whole world. We want there to be a pretty open process." And so we'll gladly tackle that. We can put that out there. So we do it. But for the most part, 97% of all the deals we've ever done have been done non-listed deals. So, we're a niche player. There are other people that do it, but I like to think that we're also thought leaders in that approach.
That's fantastic. I love that. What are some ways? I know you said you kind of mined your own network in the beginning, going, "Oh, hey, who are the attorneys? Who are some of these people that I can connect with that might know people that have assets to sell?" What advice would you give to somebody in today's, maybe, like you, cold calling all day long isn't their bag? Like, what would you say to them to say, "Hey, you're going to go out and find off-market deals. You're going to find," or as you put it, below the radar deals. What's an effective strategy maybe that you're using or that you'd recommend?
Well, I think a big part of it is the networking, and it's about smart networking, not just networking. Smart networking involves taking, using your brain. Sure, LinkedIn's a wonderful tool, but it's a tool. It's not going to find for you the deals or the people.
Right.
And you really should try to go out there and meet people in person. And, I have associates in my brokerage, and, when I'm, coaching them about how to network, I tell them, follow your interests. And, I have this extreme example. It's kind of a joke. I say, if you have a hobby, if you're into knitting, go join a knitting group and, be involved in that knitting group. And over time, you never know where you may get your next deal from. Somebody in the knitting group might, be sitting on a major property. And so that's why I made sure to be involved in different things, and charitable things, volunteer things, professional groups. But the big part of it is that you have to have a commitment to those things. You can't just like show up once and expect to, bring in business. I mean, a long time ago when I lived and worked in the city of Chicago downtown, I joined this downtown club called the Standard Club. And, it's by invitation, and, there's a lot of, old guys who have done really well there. And I just remember a lot of, people like my age or younger, well, I'm going to join there and I'm going to get a deal immediately. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. You then got to get involved in the club. So I started getting involved in committees at the club, helping to plan events. I eventually found myself on the membership committee, the house committee, and then eventually found myself on the board of directors of the club. And I served on the board of directors of that club for 6 years. And you learn a lot, by the way. That's the other neat thing. You learn about how a business runs, because a club is a business. You have paid employees and assets and so forth. And so as you interact with those people, those committees, those boards, they get to know you. They, you build a level of trust, and that's how you get connected. So there's no one way. It's just about like, how do you connect with people? And then, the other thing, the really important thing is try very hard every day to be a giver, not a taker. And so, and especially at the point in my life I'm at, like, I really, I like to meet people, and I have like zero expectations what they can do for me. I kind of feel like, hey, I like this person, I want to help them. And, maybe one day it comes back to benefit me, but, it's part of like just doing, good deeds every day. I help people, looking for jobs in industries that maybe have nothing to do in real estate, but like, I know people, in those different businesses. We have a friend, she was a CPA looking to work in a big corporation. And, I got her an introduction to the CEO, who got her an interview. Do a nice thing. I don't know if it will turn into a real estate lead for me, but if I do, enough good deeds on an ongoing basis, hopefully something comes back out of it, and I know enough people where I'm at in my career that it gets even easier. But you have to be really committed to developing relationships, and people have to really trust you. I mean, if someone wants to quietly, sell a property, they don't want you to spill the beans, and they want you also to be knowledgeable, and they have to see you kind of in action, maybe in other environments.
What you've proposed to me sounds like the get rich slow game, right? It's like this, and I'm not saying it's a bad method. Don't mishear me.
Sure, right.
But it's one of those things where it's like, this is something that you build over time. Is there a way, if someone were starting out to follow in your footsteps, but do it in such a way that they can build momentum? Because I feel like momentum begets momentum. And
sure.
I love your method. I love the idea of finding off market properties. I love the idea of doing below the radar deals, helping out sellers and buyers, and keeping it all in a pretty quiet, low profile. That speaks to me. I like that entirely. But is there a way to execute your plan purposefully such that you find scale in a meaningful amount of time?
It does have to do with the focus on what kind of opportunities to find through that network. And I do think that someone that is committed, even a young person that's committed to connecting with people, can scale up pretty quickly. It's not necessarily all like relationships just through years. You may meet someone over the course of weeks or months that you develop a relationship with, especially if you're involved in, a volunteer group or a, professional group. But it's also about what kind of deals are you looking to do. So, it depends on what your goals are. I mean, do you want to make $50,000 in, income a year, and you want to make $500,000 a year?
You were saying that 50,000 or 500,000.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're looking to. Yeah, so then you got to look at like what kind of deals you got to go. You got to spend time on, and an hour spent on a commission that makes you say only $5,000 is the same 1 hour that you could spend on a deal that could make you 100,000. Like it's about using your time. That's that effectively. If you are chasing too many small things, then it's inefficient. How are you going to scale up on that income aspect? So there's a discipline. You also, there is some risk taking. I think there's risk taking in anything. I mean, whether if someone's looking to be an investor and they want to, scale up to a few hundred apartments and they set out a timeline, it's all about the vectors that they choose to go on, right? So it's the same thing with brokerage. You have to find that balance, and you have to be realistic about some things. So everybody would like to make, $1 million a year, okay, well, but how do you get from point A to point B? And so what kind of commissions, what's the frequency, and, what kind of deals produce that? What's the timeline? And so, when I was younger, I was kind of feeling my way around, I was doing also a lot of deals involving development. I had a whole stable of clients that were looking to develop sites for Walgreens and other, net lease tenants. And that was hot, 15, 20 years ago. And it was something that, obviously changed. But one thing I learned early on was that those commissions don't come within 90 or 120 days. Those commissions are contingent upon the developer client getting their zoning contingencies, maybe some financing contingencies, et cetera. I had some deals where I waited 18 or 24 months for commission. And frankly, the commissions, when it's land, that's usually kind of a more bottom of the whole thing, because, it's unimproved. So there's not as much value to make commission off of. But I still learned a lot of things. I was glad I did some of those deals. Did actually open up the door to selling existing Walgreens. So those same developers said, "Hey, Dave, we want to sell those Walgreens." And then other people at Walgreens saw me selling them, and I'd have people saying, "Well, I've got this older Walgreens. It's got 7 years left on it. What do you think I can do with it?" Sometimes that lower, that smaller commission piece might be a stepping stone. So don't always pass on it, especially if it opens up the door to deal with someone that is, a long-term relationship and maybe has bigger assets to get involved with.
What would you say are some opportunities you're seeing right now in commercial real estate that you feel are compelling?
I think right now, industrial is one of the neatest areas. But it also depends on what part of industrial. So I don't go chasing shiny balls, so to speak, in industrial, which would be your Amazon leased facilities, things that are capital markets deals. I mean, even when I hear that term capital markets deal, it's is that a real estate deal or is it a finance play? Right. Is it financial alchemy? What the heck is that? So in industrial, I focus on B and C grade industrial, stuff that, is value add, stuff that's not exactly pretty, but there's still a need. And, we work also with users, by the way. We don't just work with investors. We also work with users. Mm. And then what's neat about industrial is that there's so many different niches. There's industrial outdoor storage, there's user deals, there's investor deals. And then there's one of my sub niches is railroads. I developed relationships with some railroads, some short line railroads. And a couple of them even hired me for consulting work with some potential real estate deals. They actually were paying me to help explore some things. Mm. That's kind of nice to get paid for your time as a real estate broker without having to wait for a commission.
Right.
And then, when I got involved in that, then all of a sudden I picked up also a client that's in the barge business. And so, I've learned a lot about barges. And again, going back to rail, not too many people have much, expertise on rail. So that enables me also to work with users who have needs that may involve rail. And then, the other thing, kind of as an aside, going back to me being a real estate entrepreneur, I am also in the truck stop business. I got into that about 10 years ago. And so I have some partners in that, and I'm one of the founding partners of this business. We took an old truck stop and turned it around. It was a foreclosed truck stop. We approached it as a real estate play, and we realized we better operate it. We said, let's apply professional grade management in an industry that's sorely lacking that. So through my involvement in the truck stop business, guess what? I met owners of truck fleets, and some of those people are very, very successful individuals, and they have real estate needs. They also like to invest in real estate. I mean, I met guys who were maybe even barely 40 years old, and they sold their truck fleet for like $100 million, and they've got that was a cash deal. So, you got to meet people that are successful, and you got to meet people off the beaten path. And so, I kind of go back to industrial. We like to work with companies that make or move things, truck fleets, manufacturers, logistics, distributors. That is the key cornerstone of our economy. And right now, there's also a lot of onshoring that's a lot of manufacturing is coming back. And so that's where the opportunities are. I think I strongly recommend to people, try to find businesses that need facilities, and whether they want to lease them, buy them, or maybe bring in an investor that's going to be their landlord, do like a sale leaseback. So there's so many different opportunities in industrial. I think that's a great place to focus on versus with multifamily. Sure, the demand is very robust, but the supply is very meager. And I have the perspective of an owner in multifamily. And so within my family, we have zero interest in selling anything, because how do we replace the cash flow? We're not like a REIT. We're not a syndicator. We're a family. We have some cousins occasionally that participate with us in our deals. So if it's hard to, acquire multifamily, then why pursue that as a broker? And I know a number of, successful real estate brokers, and they focus on multifamily. They tend to be involved in deals in very specific areas, specific niches. And I don't think I want to be too narrow. I don't want to be the guy that's the expert on apartments in the eastern part of the northwest section of, Western Chicago. That's scary.
Absolutely. David, you've given us so much to think about today. This has been a blast learning about all the various things, both business-wise that you're involved in, and just how you've built your business over time. And again, going back to finding, the kind of introduction of finding below the radar deals, and then how you just got started in the industry and finding those below the radar deals, and then connecting buyers and sellers, and then also what you personally have invested in. Certainly a lot to learn from you, and appreciate you taking the time to come on today. If our listeners want to get in touch with you or learn more about you, what is the best way to do that?
They're welcome to email me, david@schwalb.com.
Fantastic. David, we'll make sure we put that there also in the show notes. And thank you again for coming on today. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Have a good one.